It's interesting what pulls you back into it. There's certain things that pull you back into grief, I think. There's certain things that bring you back into the trauma of the moment.
The longing for what was.
Right.
Or what could have been. When you ache for what your kids don't get to
My
experience.
sunshine.
Yeah.
To be honest, when I was little, I really thought that he.
I remember falling off the bed and that super strong arm just going
I
like.
had to borrow the truck for something. But I remember getting in it and just like falling completely apart.
I like to look up at the stars and just pray and tell God to give this message to Papa.
This is my daughter-in-law, Joy, who is married to my oldest son. So she's been my daughter-in-law for the longest out of my three. I say daughter-in-law, I don't even like that word, daughter-in-love. And she claims she's the favorite because she's been here the longest.
Yep.
So
I'd say that's accurate.
yeah. So we try not to show favoritism, but Joy says she knows she's the favorite. So that's how it is. Well, today we're going to look at grief from the standpoint of still Don passing, and talking about our family grief, which Don was my husband, passed away at 55 years of age. And I've interviewed sons, I'll be interviewing grandchildren, but also I want to interview my daughters-in-law and look at their perspective of things, because I think sometimes there are people in the circle of immediate grief that they grieve heavily, but they get kind of lost in the shuffle. So I want to say, first of all, is there anything that you remember about Dad as far as first meeting him?
Okay, so Jamie and I met in college, and we were trying to get to know each other. And I knew Jamie was goofy, but I also really appreciated that he wasn't attention seeking. So, he could be a lot of fun, but he wasn't the class clown, and that's something I noticed and appreciated. Well, then his parents came to visit, and I was nervous to meet you guys, and you all looked like you had it together. You're so put together and looked so sharp, and I remember just thinking, be normal. And Dad, right away, right out the gate, joked with me and teased me, and it just was comforting to feel like, okay, this guy's normal.
Yes.
And he's not going to try to hold me up to a certain standard that I can't keep up with. So that was really comforting, yeah.
And you would come to find out over the years just how flawed we all are.
I still think you have it pretty put together.
How long did you know Dad? I think it's important for us to establish that you knew him for a while.
13 years. So Jamie and I got married in 2009, and we knew each other a few years before that. And just from you guys coming and visiting the college, or me coming to visit you guys, and I remember each time just feeling like I wanted to just be normal and get to know these people and not blow it or whatever. But Dad was always so calm and kind, and I feel like I could sense that that's where Jamie got that attitude of funny, great sense of humor, but didn't have to be the center of attention.
Right, no,
just
Dad did
not
not.
Self-seeking, not trying to get his attention, get everybody's attention on him. So I really appreciated that about him, that was just it felt peaceful to be around him.
Oh,
You didn't feel like you had to
kind of
try.
calms things down. I didn't realize till after he passed I really was the crazy one, and he kind of kept me in order, to be honest. So I say that because you can know somebody for a few months or a year and feel extremely close to them, but 13 years is a little mini lifetime. So it was somebody that you were close to, and that brings me to this. So did you feel close to Dad? Did you feel like he was your inner circle of people?
Yeah, I felt incredibly close to him. I did not feel like an in-law or an outlaw, as he would joke about at different times. I did not feel that. I felt like we were blood relatives.
Yes.
I have always felt that way. Right off the bat, I felt like this is so kind of both of you all to treat me that way, and just part of the family, not like an outsider having to earn her way in.
and that is how we felt, and how I feel, because I remember when we first met, and then as you all dated, got engaged, and then were married, there was an awkwardness to both sides, because I remember thinking, Joy has great parents that she's very close to. So how do we make sure she knows how much we love her, but doesn't feel like we're trying to cut in on that relationship, like we're
Right.
trying to replace them? So
But
I
I
do
think-
think that. Go ahead.
Well, I just think you did a really good job. You both did a good job, and I could tell that you were trying to tread that carefully, but you also were just so loving and supportive, and just
We do.
did a good job with that.
I do feel like we claimed you as our own right then, although I know you rightfully belong to your parents, but we claimed you as our own,
And they've said-
still do.
Since the beginning, they've said, we are so grateful for the Sumters, how they've just taken you in as their own, and we know that if we're this far away, they have been so loving and kind, and I know that you're well taken care of, and I know Jamie's taking care of you, but it's also so comforting to know that there's another set of parents nearby that can help with stuff, and you guys did a great job with that, and you are still.
Bless your heart. So, what do you think of when you think of Dad? Whether it's a description or words or characteristic, or
I think of,
Joy's our crier. She's worried about crying, and I keep telling her not to worry about it. But so let's just cry and get it over with. Let's do it.
So, I do think about his really calming eyes, his look, that he could cast a look across the room, and he would know if we were going through something hard. And then just life transitions are hard, not bad, but you know, if you think early on back to being a new bride, you come away from your family.
Yes.
You've moved to a new church and all of these things. You're trying to get to know everybody's names and who's related to everybody and keep track of all of that. And I just feel like he was very aware of those kinds of difficult transitions for folks, and that way toward me. And I could sense, you know, there's from the new bride phase to the new mom phase, and new positions at work or different things happening. He would be very good to, he'd just give you a look across the room and you just felt, I just got a hug. It's kind of like, Dad approves, you know, like it's okay. And it's not like you're doing it all perfect, but he was just such a supporter. That stands out to me. He was in love with his family and head over heels for the grandkids, of course, as I'm sure you've heard from different podcasts, but so supportive. Just he wasn't the person that had to share his opinion on everything, and it doesn't mean we don't all have them, but he was careful with his words and he was very supportive.
Good thoughts. Good thoughts. What about a special memory? That might be, I don't know if that's a different vein of something. Is it funny or sweet or...
Okay, here's one where our church has a wonderful Christian school, and we're very supportive of it. And I did not expect to begin the path of homeschooling our kids. It just was never on my radar. And then come K4, when Ellie our oldest, would begin school, we just very much felt like the Lord wanted us to keep her home that year. And that was a very unusual thing, since we're from a staff family and everyone we knew went to Landmark. And I thought, I wonder how this is going to be received. Not because you guys hadn't already been so supportive. It was just
But
so
that's something unusual to navigate.
Yeah,
Like,
and
we
I
have
just-
a Christian school, but we're going to keep our child home. Is it saying that we're not okay with the school or what?
Right, and even
Yeah.
to this day, we still have people kind of lean in and they're like, so is there like a problem? Like, no, there's not a
I
problem.
just want to be with my
I
kids.
know, and we know it's a wonderful, wonderful option, and we love our staff family at the school, but we just felt really comfortable with keeping her home that year, so we did. And I remember you guys showing up at our door on her first day of school in her cute little t-shirt dress, and you guys were so kind to come and show that support.
So I would say to that I remember you being concerned about that, putting Ellie, or homeschooling Ellie, but you said, God has just really put it in my heart that those are very cherished moments where I want to really influence my child at those youngest years.
Yeah.
And you felt that that's what God wanted you to do, not because there was something wrong with putting her into that school or any school. It was that's where you felt you should be. And that's even continued for a while. And I know that there may be a point you decide to do something different, but right now that's on your heart and mind. And I do think it's important for families to realize that that's just not just that, but any decision that you make, you're concerned about your parents or your in-laws, their input in it. And it reminds us all to have guarded words, to talk things through, to be careful, because that's part of us working together as a family.
You guys really could have made that hard on us. But you didn't. You were really kind. And I'll retract, but when you guys showed up that day just to cheer Ellie on, and she opened the door and her curls sticking out to here at K4, and she had these bright blonde curls sticking out. And she was so tickled that you guys came to cheer her on for her first day of school. And that meant so much to me, knowing that, everybody's starting their first day of school and it means something special to them, but they're doing the drop off to school setting. And I wanted it to be special for her. And I didn't ask you guys to come by, and you just did that. So that meant a lot. That was really special.
Let's go into the deeper, darker things. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's okay.
Here we go.
We'll talk first, before we talk about your own angle on it. One of the reasons I want to talk to you as my daughter-in-law is that your husband lost his dad. He lost someone very close to him. And we have all kinds of different relationships we could turn this around and apply it to. But I don't want to make it sound like you're secondary, but that's what's perceived out there, is that this son lost his dad. And so he's going to have an even deeper or greater loss than perhaps you as the daughter-in-law. So we'll go into that later. But what was it like to watch someone or be with someone? Just describe, what about that situation where someone you love dearly and are close to lost someone so close to them?
Well, I think right off the bat, we were all in just such shock.
Yes.
Because we knew Dad was dealing with back issues, and we knew that he had heart issues, but I personally hadn't put the two together.
Right.
And we had just gone on our family vacation.
Yes.
And we could tell that he was tired, and we could tell some different things were going on, but I was thinking back related. Like, my brain was not at a life or death mindset.
I was too. Yeah.
I was shocked. So shock, big time shock. And then, just it's hard to put into words. That kind of, because you're grieving for the relationship that you personally just lost.
Right.
But then also grieving for your spouse and watching him go through that kind of agony. It's hard to put that into words. You're probably looking for some words, but that's hard to...
No, it's okay.
That's hard to put into words.
It's okay to say there are no words. That's sometimes what we...
Yeah.
It's often what I say to people now who I go up to who are grieving a loss is there are no words, because it's not about me in that moment. I don't have words to get you, that are going to...
They're going to fix it,
yeah,
make it all
exactly.
better. Yeah.
They're going to make it all better.
Uh-huh.
So that, yes.
I think there was a lot of trying to navigate what he needed, what Jamie needed, because I was trying to be the best support system I could be to him. There was a season where it felt like, the guys, the brothers, were in such a grief cloud, and they were dealing with so much themselves. So Lauren and I and Christy, we would just kind of give each other this knowing look, like checking on each other. Are you okay? Because we're trying to hold it up for each other and hold it up for our husbands and keep the kids taken care of, and also reinforce how much Daddy wants to be involved, and he's here, but mentally he was going through so much and emotionally going through so much. So there was a lot of trying to balance that, trying to figure out when to talk and when to listen, and mostly just needed to listen. Talking wasn't really needed a lot of times.
I do remember that immediately, all of you, the sons, the daughters-in-laws, and the grandbabies that were with us at the time coming to the house and us all being together. And I remember, I was in a fog, but I do remember watching you all move around and take care of your children, check on your husbands, and do the basic things like get out food or put food away, or just things that needed to be done for daily life. I remember noticing that and even thinking they're coping with a lot right now, because I know they're heartbroken to lose dad. I know that they're heartbroken to watch their husbands, and your babies, your grandbabies, and then, or your babies, my grandbabies, and then to physically, you didn't feel like you could just sit down and grieve all the time. You were up trying to do things, thinking, well, we're going to help them. And I do remember thinking, oh, I hate that I love that they're helping so much, but I hope they're okay. But I was in such a cloud and in such shock that it was like I was too distraught to do something about it. You know what I mean? And not that I could have or should have. I'm just saying, I remember noticing you all just taking over and
But I think that's also
everything.
Just what naturally happens with
Yeah.
a family. And when we're close, which we are, it's not even thought of. It's just,
we're doing
you
this.
just do it. Yeah, you just buckle down and make it happen. So, yeah, I think there were some trying to figure out a balance between, trying to be present for Jamie, but not just always talk. Because he's a preacher, some might think that he's a talker, but he's not. He's like his dad in that. He doesn't need to talk all that often. So, me trying to fill all the empty space didn't need to happen.
Right.
And I think we learned a lot about that through that time.
So along that vein, I remember something that happened to me that I feel like I probably know a very little bit of what you went through at that time when Jamie went off to college. He was our first to leave home, and we were so close that Dad and I were devastated. I remember this will be another podcast too, or episode for YouTube or podcast, where I discussed the grief of children leaving home. But anyway, to relate it to what we're talking about, I was so mad at my parents and people that didn't tell me how horrible this moment was. Like, this is just like earth shattering, and we grieved it so heavily. But to correlate with what I'm talking about with you, Dad was so heartbroken and grieved so heavily. He cried all the time about it. Had chest pain where it was wearing so heavy on him that I had to bolster and kind of like be the strong one.
Rally.
I just felt like I had to. Rally's a good word. All through the time that we left him, and then even that first year. And I remember when Jamie left the second year for college, I really started to grieve and miss him in a different way and let myself cry, because I had kind of delayed, I know I had grieved and was sad about it, but I had kind of delayed my part of the grief on that because Dad was struggling. And I feel like, you've been crying a lot as we prepped for this interview. I don't know if I'm not trying to diagnose, I'm not a doctor or any of that, but I think that sometimes, I look over and see how much you're going through now, and I'm wondering how much you set as aside to, to help your family.
Yeah, I think a lot, because we're still processing. I don't think we're on the other side completely.
Right.
I don't know when that happens, if it ever happens on the side of eternity, but it feels still very fresh. So, there's the concept of the kids are around. Be careful how much you talk about the sadness, because they went through a lot.
Yeah.
They saw us all grieving, and there's parts of it that you can't and don't need to hide from the kids. But there's a point where you want them to see Mom and Dad be happy,
yes.
and you want them to see there's structure to our day. There's things to expect, like they know what to expect in the day, because you want that rhythm for your kids. So I think there was a lot of holding it together for that too. And so when the kids are around, it doesn't mean we do talk about Dad, we really do. But, we don't want it to always be in sadness. So it's kind of like you turn that off.
Yes.
And when I turn it on, then it's just the floodgates, and I don't know how to turn it back off.
That's okay.
Maybe I'll learn that one day.
No,
I don't know.
I think it's great. We all grieve differently. That's what we've been doing these interviews for. Is I hope it helps people understand. We've got our criers who cry all about it. We've got delayed grief sometimes. We've got immediate grief that's overwhelming, that does things to us. And some of us, like I do cry. I fall apart when I'm by myself. And it's not that I try to wait till then. It's just how I'm made up. And of course I do cry some off and on in these discussions also. But I'm just, people are wired differently, and that's all okay. We're all still grieving just fine.
And I think Jamie said, it would not be okay if we all grieved at the same moment, the same way, because somebody's got to pick the other one up. We got to hold each other up, and I'm grateful that we have each other to do that. And sometimes it's something sweet or silly that one of the kids says to us that turns the mood to be sweet, and then sometimes it's us adults.
Yeah.
Well,
I know for one, I'm thankful to have you in my life. I'm thankful that you have been. I'm so grateful for my 3 daughters in love. I could not have handpicked them better if God let me. I did pray for them to come into my son's lives, but it amazes me. Each one of you are different, and yet each one of you are so perfect for whatever your husband needs and whatever their strengths are. Might be I don't know whether we call them weaknesses or not, but the areas y'all are strong in really complement and supplement and fill in where the guys aren't strong. And each one of that's different because their personalities are different. But anyway, I can't say enough. I don't like the daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law jokes. I mean, I know they're funny, but
I can't relate. I really can't.
I really do. I love you all dearly, and am so thankful that God placed you in my life and for what you've done to balance out my sons.
Well, I was just thinking, I felt like we were really close before Dad passed, but I feel like we've grown closer since.
Yes.
Dramatically so. Yeah. And I feel like we've also grown closer to the Lord, which we should be as believers anyway, continually being sanctified more and more. And I feel like the Lord's teaching us a lot, but there's a lot of things we're kind of learning together.
Yes.
So that's probably helped us grow closer.
Yeah. We as I mentioned before in a different episode, the suffering is what grows us and what strengthens us. And so I think we've experienced some of that suffering together. So it bonds us and it strengthens both of us. You're exactly right. Plus now you're my pastor's wife, and I was a pastor's wife.
That's weird.
No, I love it. You're a great one, but you're my pastor's wife. I was a pastor's wife. So we have that connection of, I kind of know some of the things you go through, and
well, it's really great too because I don't have to say anything. Sometimes I can just give you a look like, help. But she understands without me having to bear all. So that's really nice.
Well, you're doing fantastic at staying humble and growing in the Lord. So also there are some things I've noticed you do to keep the memory of Dad alive for your children too, because I know Ellie remembers Papa and Boston barely. Lex was too young to remember him, but I know there's some specific things you've been thoughtful to do. So I think it'd be helpful for people to hear. What are some things you do to keep his memory alive?
We just talk about him throughout the regular day. We want that to be natural. We'll think about, if something reminds us of him, we'll try to bring that up in regular conversation so that the kids don't feel like it's taboo to talk about Papa because we're going to make Mom and Dad sad.
Right.
We just want to be able to talk about him. And then, we don't live far from the cemetery, so we'll stop by there. Sometimes we'll stop by with Happy Meals because we grabbed lunch, and then that sounds really weird.
No,
but we will sometimes just sit there and have lunch and
some memory you have of him.
Yeah. And so we'll do that sometimes, and then listening to pulling up video clips. And I'm sure it's been mentioned, Dad was not one that really wanted to be in front of the camera much, so it's a little harder to find. But trying to find video clips and pictures. We have chat books at our house with lots of pictures from them, and they'll say, "Can we find the book with me with Papa?" So they really want that specific connection with him and try to keep that going. And then we did the shadow box, which I just picked up the other day, and I love to look through that.
Yes.
So the little phrases, we wrote down phrases that they thought of in regards to what memories they had of Papa, and wrote those down. And they still, every time they color a picture of him, he's got curly hair, big eyes, and the red and white and black striped shirt. So the poor man, I know he wore other clothes, but you wouldn't know it.
He wore that one a lot.
You wouldn't know it.
He had a black one like that and a red one like that, and I felt like I washed him every day.
You find a good thing, get it in every color.
Exactly.
Or two colors.
Exactly. Well, is there anything else on your heart or mind that you've thought of that you'd love to?
Yes, I have been trying to read more and more. I've have a friend that mentioned, when your kids are little, you don't feel like you have your brain. You feel like you have mom brain, and you blame everything on that. Either not having enough time, or just hard to focus in on things. But I've been trying to read quite a bit more recently, outside of scripture, of course, and with scripture. But there's this quote that has been really standing out to me recently, and it has been such a help to me. It's by Jim Elliot, and I'm going to look at my notes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let not your longing steal the appetite of your living.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So that longing can go in both directions.
Yeah.
The longing for what was,
Right.
or what could have been, with,
Right.
How you ache for what your kids don't get to experience with him.
Yes.
But then just kind of like, we had it so good, longing for what that was, and kind of going back to that, or the longing in the other direction. I have had such a mindset for eternity in the past handful of years, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's great. But either way, if you swing hard one way or the other, you're probably going to find yourself in an unhealthy position, because we have this present as a gift right now to be with the kids and with our spouses and with each other and make memories now. So that's been a help to me, and just been thinking, if we focus, so I want to always keep those sweet memories alive and talk about them and go back to them and look through everything. And I really want to carry Dad's memory with us for our kids and for ourselves throughout life. And it would feel unnatural to try to sever that. And that's not at all the goal. But I just want my mind and heart to also have a good balance, to be present, so that I can be invested in the relationships we have in this family, and then our new joint family together. That God did that. That's a miracle and a blessing. And if all my attention is spent on the longing of what was, then I can't really appreciate what we have now, which is a really good thing. And God did that. So to appreciate that, and then toward eternity, how sweet that will be to be all together. But we still have some time that God wants us to use for His glory, and to lead our children to Christ and those around us. Then, as I've talked with other people that have walked through grief, whether it's this same or similar situation or something totally different, recently with folks that have lost loved ones, I've tried to tell them, please realize that, you've now reached the 6 to 8 week mark where people stop mentioning their name to you, and that feels hurtful, and it feels like, wait a second, this person changed my life, they impacted they're a part of our life, why is no one talking about them anymore? And that was a really hard thing to swallow. And I think I figured a little something out, that I think it's because they're trying to show love. They're trying not to hurt you. They're trying to say, okay, well, she's having a good day. I want to
make her start crying right now.
Start it all over again. And we all know how quick that can happen.
Oh, yeah.
So,
and it's awkward. Grief is awkward. Like, people just...
You don't know if you're overstepping or,
Ellie said, she's our 9-year-old granddaughter that was 5 at the time her papa passed, but she said, I remember coming into the house and seeing everyone crying, and thinking, oh, I just want it to stop. I just want everybody to stop being so sad.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, she was sad and was kind of aggravated at the little kids playing on the side because they weren't showing sadness. They didn't know any better. I think that translates to adults. You know, I think when people come around you and you're grieving, they just want it all to be okay.
I want to fix it and like, okay,
so,
we're done.
So we're not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And you know, that there's some good and some bad to that.
Well, because then you also, you know, you're going through grief. But then you can look out in a crowd and think, well, if I'm going through it, everybody around me is going through something else. I don't need to burden them with my grief, so I'll stop talking about it, and they'll stop talking about it, and then we're not really dealing with it,
Right.
Because we're trying to just appease, I don't know, maybe appease the moment, but that's something that stood out to me is that there is a certain time frame that people stop mentioning that loved one's name, and I think it's not intended to come off hurtful. It's actually intended for the absolute opposite reason. They're trying to be loving and kind, and that person hasn't been forgotten. They're loved and care, and people think about them and think of stories, and they just don't know when is a good time to, hey, can I send you that message, or send you a message about that story or that thought, or come up, you know, do I start the church service saying, hey, I had this memory of your loved one the other day. I wanted to share it with you. Is that a bad time to do that? And just trying to figure out the right timing. But people mean it well.
Yeah, they do mean it well. But I think it's a good reminder, too, that if you have a memory of someone, it's nice to... I know I shared a memory with someone recently. Just said, I want you to know I thought about your mom, and she made this for me or did this, and, you know, this evoked a memory, and I just remember her smile. And that person... I didn't even realize it on the calendar, but the next day was the 1 year mark.
Oh, wow.
And they, you know, kind of teared up and they were so appreciative that somebody remembered something about their, and I'm not praising myself because I'm not very good at that.
The Lord might have brought that to your
I'm
mind.
not very good at that.
And
so that is exactly what I thought afterwards. I thought, wow. When I realized the next day was the 1 year mark, yeah, I feel like that. Knowing my memory, that was just God bringing that to my mind. That's the truth. So I do think, you know, it's insightful that people aren't doing that on purpose, but and it's insightful that we tend to really be bothered by that our person's going to be forgotten or didn't matter. I mentioned that sometimes, and then. But it's also important to remember, okay, if you have that thought about that person, don't be afraid about stirring up a tear or something. Just share it with them because it means a lot.
I think that would mean a lot, even if they do cry at that moment, and it's not, you didn't do a bad thing because of those tears. You're actually helping them because they do feel like somebody's thinking of them, somebody's remembering. So I think those are good to do.
As we kind of wrap up, what is something on your heart and mind that has helped you in your grief?
Well, this morning I was reading Psalm 68, and there are actually quite a few verses that stood out to me throughout that chapter, but one of them I wrote down from verse 19. It talks about that the Lord daily bears me up. And that's a perfect description of what he's done for our family, and that there's certain days you get up and think, I can't do today. I can't do it well. I want to have a grieving day. I want to sit down and not have to care for anybody because I want to grieve. Or I don't want to have to put on a smile to not make the kids sad or make Jamie sad or whatnot. But Christ daily bears me up. He definitely, he's holding you. So what a sweet picture of our Heavenly Father doing that for us continually.
How sweet is that? And you know, I keep the grandkids for you to go get things done, but maybe I need to keep the grandkids for you to have a grief day.
I might just do combination. Drinking coffee and crying at the same time, and running errands and crying at the same time.
Well, I want you to know that if I could go handpick who Jamie married, I would pick you over again 100 times, and I love you.
I love you too.
Thanks for doing this today.
Sure thing.